Morning police stormed Julius Malema's mansion. Everything changed. Sirens echoed through the quiet streets as officers carried out boxes of electronics, sealed evidence bags, and files that looked anything but ordinary. Reporters shouted questions, supporters screamed, "Witch hunt," and the nation held its breath. By nightfall, whispers of hidden drives, wiped footage, and secret rooms had spread like wildfire. And suddenly, everyone wanted to know the same thing. Julius Malema's rise to power was as dramatic as the controversies that would follow him. Once the fiery head of the African National Congress Youth League, he built his reputation as a fearless populist, unafraid to challenge authority, especially those at the top. When he broke away to form the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, in 2013, he turned his party into a political spectacle, a mix of anger, theater, and unapologetic defiance. Dressed in red overalls, Malema and his followers became the voice of the frustrated youth and the working class. He was a master of commanding crowds, blending radical economic ideas with raw charisma. But beneath the energy and revolution-style rallies, the seeds of his downfall were already being planted.
Julius Malema is sticking to his and insists the weapon he fired was a toy.
The turning point came in 2018 at a rally that would go down as one of the most shocking political moments in South Africa's modern history. In front of thousands of cheering supporters, Malema, dressed in his signature red attire, pulled out what looked like an automatic rifle and fired several shots into the air. The crowd erupted in excitement, interpreting the act as a symbol of rebellion and power. Cameras captured every second, and within hours, the footage was everywhere. What Malema thought was a dramatic political gesture instantly became a criminal investigation. To his supporters, it was harmless theater. To the authorities, it was a blatant violation of the law. He framed the incident as political persecution, claiming the government was desperate to tarnish his image and suppress his influence.
For the pre-sentence reports. Now in this regard, I want to place on record, I am not sure as to whether the defense, being Advocate Julius and myself, will be leading evidence or in witnesses in that regard.
After years of delays, arguments, and mounting tension, the court finally delivered its verdict. Malema was convicted on multiple counts related to the firearm incident. For many, it was the moment accountability caught up with him. Yet even then, he refused to back down. He called the conviction an attack on political expression, saying the system feared his growing influence. But the reality was serious. Under South African law, a sentence of more than a year could disqualify him from serving in parliament. For a man whose entire identity revolved around political power and public image, that risk was enormous. When news broke that police had raided Julius Malema's luxury home, many assumed it was connected to his recent firearm conviction. But beneath the surface, the motive ran much deeper. This wasn't just about a gun fired at a rally years ago. It was about a much larger web of allegations, financial pressure, and political maneuvering that had been closing in on him for years. For Malema, legal trouble has always been a shadow that follows closely behind his fame. Every time he rose higher, that shadow grew darker. Long suspected, Malema's finances aren't as clean as his political speeches make them sound. Over the years, he's faced multiple allegations of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering, many tied to his time as a government official and his later business ventures. Several investigations by South Africa's elite crime unit have linked him to irregular tenders and questionable deals that allegedly benefited him and his associates. While he has always denied the accusations, claiming they're politically motivated, the sheer volume of financial controversies surrounding him has kept law enforcement interested. One of the biggest thorns in his side has been his ongoing dispute with the South African Revenue Service, SARS. Reports have suggested that Malema owes millions in unpaid taxes, a debt that's grown alongside his legal battles. The financial strain has become a powerful pressure point for authorities who see it as both a legal and strategic weakness. When combined with his recent conviction for the incident, it gave investigators the perfect excuse to dig deeper, and that's where the raid comes in. The police weren't just looking for firearms or ammunition. They were after paper trails, digital evidence, and anything that could connect the dots between his political life and his financial dealings. They wanted bank statements, transaction records, and potentially encrypted data that could reveal offshore accounts or hidden assets. The state's argument is clear. Malema's case might be the tip of the iceberg, the visible spark that leads to something far more incriminating beneath. For the government, success in this investigation would mean more than a legal victory. It would be a political win, proof that no one is untouchable, not even one of South Africa's most powerful and polarizing figures. But if the evidence fails to hold, the raid could backfire dramatically. Malema would use it to fuel his narrative of persecution, portraying himself as a revolutionary hunted by a corrupt establishment. He has always thrived in chaos, turning into opportunities for sympathy and support. When officers arrived at Julius Malema's home, this wasn't just a routine search, it was a calculated mission. The police came armed with specific warrants, intelligence, and a long list of potential evidence they hoped to uncover. Behind the scenes, investigators were convinced that what lay inside those walls could finally expose the side of Malema that his public image never showed. They weren't only after they were after proof of a pattern, a bridge between his political power and alleged private profits. One of the top priorities was authorities believed there could be additional unregistered weapons or ammunition hidden somewhere in the property. Given Malema's recent firearm conviction, finding more weapons would be explosive, not just legally, but politically. It would allow prosecutors to deepen the existing charges and argue that the 2018 rally wasn't a one-off stunt, but part of a larger culture of recklessness and defiance. Police were ready to search every corner, safes, garages, and even panic rooms for anything that could be tied to illegal weapon possession. But the real treasure hunt was digital. Investigators were reportedly after laptops, hard drives, encrypted phones, and transaction logs that could reveal the true scale of Malema's finances. They suspected these devices might contain evidence of offshore transfers, coded communications, and payment records tied to government tenders. Emails, text messages, and even deleted files were considered potential gold mines that could help trace money flowing from public projects into private accounts. If such data existed, it could unravel years of hidden dealings and expose links between political influence and personal enrichment. Then there was the paper trail: ledgers, bank statements, and bookkeeping records. Forensic accountants and data analysts were on standby to sift through financial documents for signs of irregularities. They were looking for anything that hinted at money laundering, ghost contracts, or shell companies used to channel state funds. The goal was simple: connect the populist firebrand who claimed to fight for the poor to the lifestyle of a man living far above his means. As the raid unfolded, news started leaking out almost immediately. Journalists camped outside the property, trying to catch glimpses of boxes and sealed evidence bags being carried away by police officers. By evening, reports began trickling in. Investigators had confiscated several electronic devices, including laptops, mobile phones, and hard drives. Sources described the haul as digital heavy, suggesting the focus was on uncovering data trails rather than physical contraband. Files, USB sticks, and even a few old desktop computers were reportedly removed from the premises. However, the story quickly took a twist. Some media outlets began claiming that much of the house seemed sterile, almost as if it had been cleaned up ahead of time. There were whispers that certain rooms looked untouched, safes appeared empty, and security systems had either been disabled or wiped. One particularly striking detail mentioned by insiders was that parts of the surveillance footage, usually stored in backup drives, were missing. That raised suspicions that Malema or his staff might have anticipated the raid. Then came the talk of missing drives and redacted files. Investigators reportedly found traces of recently deleted data and devices that had been factory reset. Whether this was coincidence or calculated preparation remains unknown, but the timing seemed too convenient for many observers. Some even claimed that investigators discovered a few hidden storage areas behind false walls. But what, if anything, was taken from there hasn't been confirmed. Despite the speculation, police sources did confirm that they retrieved numerous financial documents and electronic records for forensic analysis. These materials are now believed to be in the hands of digital crime experts who will spend weeks reconstructing deleted files and tracing transaction logs. The hope is to uncover connections between Malema's political dealings and his alleged financial network. The police raid on Julius Malema's home hit the headlines. It was like an earthquake across South Africa's political landscape. By sunrise, every major newspaper had the story splashed across its front page. Malema home searched. Police seized devices. Convict faces new probe. Television talk shows couldn't get enough of it. Panel after panel debating what it meant for the country's most polarizing political figure. And then came the internet. Twitter, or X, exploded. Hashtags like #MailMaraid and #EFF_witchhunt shot up the trending charts, turning the event into a full-blown media storm. The reactions were sharply divided, almost like two different countries watching the same movie. Malema's supporters, especially his loyal EFF base, saw the raid as pure political persecution. To them, it was proof that the establishment was terrified of a man who dared to speak for the poor. Social media was filled with posts comparing him to historical revolutionaries who were for truth. Influential party figures echoed that sentiment, calling the raid a witch hunt and accusing the government of weaponizing law enforcement to crush opposition voices. EFF's official statement condemned the move, demanding transparency from both the police and the Justice Ministry. But on the other side, Malema's critics felt vindicated. To them, this was a long overdue reckoning. Politicians, journalists, and even some former allies argued that nobody should be above the law, not even a populist leader with millions of followers. Many saw the raid as a crucial test of South Africa's justice system, whether it could finally prove that power and influence don't grant immunity. Public opinion was loud and emotional, but also deeply fractured. Half the country saw injustice, the other half saw accountability. Inside Parliament, the fallout was immediate. Opposition parties pushed for detailed disclosures about the raid, what was found, what laws justified it, and who authorized it. Meanwhile, the government found itself walking a tightrope. Officials had to defend the legality of the raid without appearing politically motivated. Ministers emphasized that no one is untouchable and that due process would be respected, but the optics were complicated. Every statement sparked fresh debate. Every press conference drew suspicion. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.